So I was having an emotional, I think spiritual experience of re-understanding what is this all about. This other realm, heaven, if you want to say that, it is beyond what we can understand.
You've opened that door and walked in the door, and now you feel very connected to the spiritual world and the spiritual side of things. Welcome to the Create Today podcast. I'm your host, Karen Stanley, certified rapid transformational therapist and hypnotherapist. And my passion is helping women heal from the past and learn how to create the life they love one day at a time. And this show is all about how you can do just that. I'm here with Jennifer Dickenson, and as the late and great Paul Harvey used to say, and now the rest of the story. Who's old enough out there that remembers Paul Harvey? We used to listen to it every day and every Sunday too.
Loved
Did you
it.
listen to that?
Absolutely.
Oh, great.
Great.
Such a great program.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, Jennifer and I did an episode a few months ago, or I don't know when, and we talked about her incredible journey healing and not just surviving, but healing through the most deadly kind of brain cancer there is. What's the name of it again? It's so long.
Glioblastoma.
Gosh,
Grade 4 brain cancer, glioblastoma.
absolutely bananas.
Yeah.
And Jennifer now helps, well, anybody sick, but especially cancer diagnoses patients, help them through their journey and help them heal. And she's written the book called A Case for Hope. And it's a beautiful, beautiful book, but we didn't get to the spiritual part of it, which was such a huge part of her healing. And that's why we're here for round two. I want to really focus and hear about the spiritual side of your healing process. Because I think a lot of us, when we get any diagnosis or any of our loved ones, we immediately go to Google and we research everything that we can think of. And I'm not so sure that that most of us would jump to, what can I do in my spiritual life to help my body? So I'd love for you to tell our listeners what even started that whole thinking process. We know that we need to take care of our body, our physical body with our health, our mindfulness. We talked about so many great tools and the ways that you helped yourself heal and now help others heal. But I want to read this before you answer that question. This is her excerpt from her book. The truth is, we are all fairly complicated, and each one of us walks through life in a different way for different reasons. Sometimes we don't understand our unique path, and we need help figuring it out. Going deeper into our souls can help us get the answers we seek. And although doing so is sometimes the hardest part of healing, it can be the most gratifying too. First of all, how did you even start going down the realm of thinking where this spiritual side of healing is even in your, in your world and even in your thought process?
That is a great question, because I did not grow up with any kind of formal religion. So I would say things like the universe, or, I never felt comfortable saying the word God. And so I sort of stumbled around, and I had friends who were very religious and some people who weren't. And so it really stumbling around. And I was curious though, because I had had a few experiences, um, a message from my grandfather when I was 10 after he died. And everybody said, no, there's nothing there. You're just a kid, and that made you feel good. And I was always kind of like, I don't know, it felt really real. And I had
Yeah.
another experience actually before I got sick, but at the beginning of the real stress period. And
Mhm.
that time I was smelling cigarettes. I was smelling cigarettes. And I was like, I don't understand what I'm supposed to learn from this. Why am I smelling cigarettes? Nobody else would hear it around me. And I asked finally, I said, please send me this information. Why am I getting the smell of these cigarettes? And the strangest thing is my sister came like a week later. She calls me. She goes, I am getting the weirdest thing. I'm getting cigarette smells in the house, but nobody else can smell it. And the message was basically warning me with respect to cancer. And they were literally using that word cancer. And so again, still I'm in universe. I'm like, oh, the universe is connecting to me, but I couldn't never say the word God. It just didn't feel, it felt fake, you know?
Mm.
And so then when I got when I got sick, that first night I was at when I was diagnosed, I was in the hospital. And my next door, the number of coincidences, I mean, not coincidences, as I realize now, this is part of the system if you allow yourself to be open to this. Remember, I'm a lawyer. I'm like, what is practical? Can you prove this? But all of these things started to happen. But the night I am at the hospital, my next door neighbor, whose husband is a brain surgeon who has worked on people just like me, they're both at the hospital as supportive, you know. He's talking to the other doctors and is trying to help us out. And I'm hugging her and I pray to God, and I don't really know how I'm doing it, but I pray to God, like, please, I if you will if you let me live, I will change everything basically, and I will support and honor my family and my kids, and I'll do all these different things. So that was the first time is out of this feeling of desperation.
Mm.
Um, for the purposes of our talk today, I literally took some of my this is just one of the versions of my crazy writing
Mm.
when I started getting all these messages starting to happen. My next door neighbor who was hugging me and she was like, this is not good news, you know, because she had worked with brain cancer people too. Um, they they had just moved to our home, our subdivision, like a year and a half before. They came from Texas. And they came here. They didn't really love the house and stuff, but they became, honestly, when I look back at it, they were basically angels that came here to help me. And then because after I got sick, everything fell apart. They went back to Texas a couple of years later. Um, but that was an important aspect of asking for help, right? Basically, can't I lost the what is it? The big I'm this, I'm a lawyer, I'm a this. I lost everything and I was down at the very bottom. And I found that night, I found God. And I just saw an immediate reorganization, which we talked about before, a reorganization of my entire life. And just by praying and asking for help, my life showed differently and it showed God first. This God that I've just introduced, right, to myself. God
Wow.
here, and then me, and then my family. And at that moment, everything else, my whole accolades as being all the achievements that I had made literally meant nothing. And that has never changed in my world. I mean, I have changed my entire life from that one night, but then I practice it, right? Like, so you
Yeah.
open yourself to this energy, this loving energy that you're willing to sort of submit yourself to, which I never liked at the beginning. You know, people would say you're in the flock and stuff. I'm like, that's terrible. I don't want to be in a flock. I'm
Mm.
grateful to be in a flock. I am
Mm.
grateful to be this. So that's kind of how it started. And then when I had the surgery, you know, brain surgery is a pretty big deal. It was like a
Mhm.
7.5 hour. And so I'm very swollen. I mean, they're giving me no hope, but still, the first thing that I noticed was there was a sensitivity of all foods. I was so grateful to be alive. This lasted for about 4 weeks where I was just unbelievable. And so when I was in the hospital for what, 5 days or something, and then when I got to stay at the house, which was my brother-in-law's house, because that was in Texas and you can't fly when you have this stuff. I
Mm.
started to every flower, every bird, every bite of food, it was as if it was brand new. It was as if everything was brand new. So I was having an emotional, I think, spiritual experience of re-understanding what is this all about. And I was vibing with this energy, and it was pretty unbelievable. So that's kind of how that all started.
I love that you said, doing so, going deeper into our souls can help us get the answers we seek. And although doing so is sometimes the hardest part of healing, it can be the most gratifying too. Why do you think it is the hardest part, or it can be the hardest part of healing?
Um,
We just have
not,
resistance, or are just our, life before this
I think
diagnosis.
I think people are reluctant to make major changes. I think change is not always easy for people. Um, I deal with cancer people all the time who have glioblastoma, and some of them are like, "Oh, I'll do whatever, I'll do everything," and other people are like, "Okay, well, I'll be back with you," and I'm like, "What? Why? You've got 12 months, man. Like this is the path. Explore Jesus,
Mm.
explore God." And I never cram this on anybody because I was on the other side of this, but it's also because I'm a pretty good choice to talk about it because I didn't believe in any of this stuff. And I didn't find God because I was scared, although I was scared, but I found God because it's like I opened a door. And once I went into this door, oh
Mm.
my gosh, all of these things started happening. The connection of everything was just unbelievable. Look at my next door neighbors. He was a brain surgeon, and we would hang out with him. And so now he becomes like a helps me and his wife, and they helped me find the right surgeon to do the surgery. Um, so there's, what is it called? Synchronicity was
Yes.
everywhere. I started video before the surgery. I was in Texas in preparation for the surgery, and I started to visualize using butterflies, taking them out of my brain, and slowly doing that, and just taking it to the backs of the end of the world. Again, I think we maybe mentioned that before, but it was an important part. And then I saw the doctor on Friday. Surgery was going to be on Monday, and the doctor said, "I'm going to visualize you getting, me getting everything out." He goes, "I want you to visualize me getting everything out." And he goes, "I'll do the same." How many doctors do that? But I thought that was amazing. But here's the third piece of this. On that Saturday, my dear friend sent me, here's a card. So I'm visualizing, I'm really vibing on these butterflies, and they're coming to my brain. I can hear the wings, and they're dropping it off, right? I'm willing this experience. And then this is the card I got my dear friend. It's a little girl like me. There's a sun kind of thing, and you can see the butterflies there.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Wow.
that's no, no. And I started to feel this energy. The day of surgery, um, that the day of surgery, that morning, I was in the bed and I woke up and I'm like, wow, this is going to be a big day, huh? And I started feeling this unbelievable sense of love, of I've never seen it before, a deep sense of love. And it was like surrounding me so much that I just started to cry. I was just like pouring, crying of joy, right? It's so strange. And then when they did the surgery, and I know people were praying for me. A lot of people knew that that was going to be my surgery day. But in the day, the surgery was maybe around 11:30. About 3 o'clock, they wake you up. This is strange, but they wake you up, and you can't move or anything, but you can communicate. And they do that for a reason. They have another doctor who's they're trying to make sure that they're not knocking anything out that could make you not functional, right?
Yeah.
Your brain is a very complicated area. So anyway, so I'm open, and I'm talking to the guy. This is the most bizarre thing, but I'm
Weird.
talking to the guy, and he's showing me images, and he's trying to see if I know these certain words. Now, the doctor on the other side is seeing what's firing. That's firing, that's firing. I can't go in there. I can. So he's looking at these areas. Well, anyway, while he's talking to me and I'm trying to answer these questions, everything sort of settled down. And again, I start this have this feeling of immense love and support, and it was just unbelievable. And I start crying. It's just the kindest, the most loving feeling. And I don't know what's happening, right? Like, I don't really understand all of these things that are happening, but you don't stop these things. You go with this because it's so good. Later, I would learn that at that time in my office, one of my friends there, one of the other lawyers, she said, everyone, I'd like everybody who feels comfortable to go and pray for Jennifer in the office. And, and we're just going to say a prayer. And that was the same time where they opened me, or where I was awake and I was feeling that love, right? So
Wow.
this opening this door that I always was very sort of rude about in some way. I'd be like, nah. Um, I became so clear that this is not only is this real, this is part of us. And once I got home, I started getting messages, and they would come to me and they would say, at the very first, I was always very suspicious, right? Like, I was like, I need validation, like, what is
Mhm.
happening here in my life? I'm 44, having this for the first time, these experiences. And the first one, they were saying how you are loved, and you are loved, and you are love. And so think about that. That's pretty amazing. And they would say things like that you are exactly where you're supposed to be, and we're here with you, and we're supporting you. And um,
Do you have any
just that.
sense of who is there somebody or specific or a group of people you feel like were the messengers? Did you ever have a sense of like these are angels or ancestors?
So, that's a great question, because it was actually all kinds of things came through.
Hmm.
My grandfather definitely came through, and my grandmother, and
You
that
could see them
that
as you remembered them looking.
yes.
Yeah. Wow.
Yes, right. Yes. And but then also, I know this is going to sound strange, so don't judge me, but uh
Not
Jesus would
not
come
to me.
Jesus would come through and tell me things, and then God, and I know it's all the same, and depending on people's religion, but the energy that I get from God is a different energy than from Jesus. And that's, to me, because Jesus was here. And there's Jesus is sort of like my pal, and for me, energetically. And so Jesus would encourage me. I had, in addition to fighting cancer, I had a business problem that happened just about 4 months into my illness that was really heartbreaking. But Jesus was always supporting me, and just words that are not normal words, comes from another level. They're not saying, oh yes, go to go to your store, go buy this, go this. It was more like from a higher level, like, we have you, and this
Hmm.
is part of your learning. Understand that this is part of your learning.
Hmm.
And I started to see my illness in a almost like a beautiful way, which is, I am supposed to be learning something here. What am I supposed to be learning? And one thing I learned from all of my papers and all of the messaging that they sent me was about really deep self-love. That
Hmm.
was a really big one. And I remember having a communication with God and Jesus, this one, and Jesus has he's got like a like a, I don't know, what would you call this? Like some kind of a crown, almost like a
Mhm.
crown. And now I'm really vibing with everybody. My grandfather, right? I'm on
Mm.
it. I am on this. And anyway, so he's got that and he puts it on my head.
Mm.
Jesus puts the crown on my head. And he says, "This is how much love, this is how much you are loved. This is how much you are loved."
Mm.
And he says, and it's not just you. Everybody is loved in this way. And I am literally pouring crying. I mean, that is about the most beautiful, gorgeous. And I am like, I am not worthy. I am not worthy to have your crown on me. And he says, but you are. And every person is as well. And I mean, I'm feeling it right now, that moment of grace, of utter grace. And one of the reasons why I never wanted to get into religion is because I always felt all the messaging was, well, we kind of talked about that before, but the messaging can be so, you know, difficult, like you're a sinner and you're a bad person and you can't do certain things. And, the love that I found from God and all these different, my grandparents and all of these people, was actually not that way. It's actually very simple. It's actually quite beautiful. And we are to try to be our very best here on earth because we have a job to do. And that was the other thing I learned here is that, what is the purpose? Later on, maybe in the ninth month, they started to say, you do have a purpose here. I want you to share. In fact, I found it in I was going through some of those pages, and one of them is, we want you to share this word of God, and we want you to share how beautiful that this is and how healing is. Remember, Jesus was a healer, right? I mean, if you
Absolutely.
believe in the Bible, and he healed people. And I think we all have purposes here, and some of us explore it. Like, obviously, you have a great talent and skill and how you help people that is given to you. That is God given. And sometimes people can't figure out what is my purpose. I don't know, but you have to get quiet and work really hard to try to figure that out because you only have so much time. People think life is so long. It's really not. You've got this little moment to try to make the best out of your life, and excuses aren't one of them.
Mm.
Yeah.
I have a good friend whose father passed away about 6 months ago. And she said that he had come to her and said, the veil is this thin, like the veil between earth and heaven is so thin. If you could just get a peek of what my life is right now, you would
Yeah.
never be sad. You would be so happy. And
Yes.
so I just want you to go and be happy and spend time with your mother. And I just love that perspective. And then the other thing my sister told me recently was the end of our lives. Somebody was saying on that same vein, don't be sad. That person is graduating to be an ancestor. And I love that because even ancestors have a purpose. Like you are actually
Oh,
illustrating that your purpose doesn't stop when your physical body, you know,
oh,
doesn't stop. Your ancestors are serving their purpose right now. It keeps going and going. And I think that's such a beautiful thing to hold on to because our physical body is not going to last very long. Isn't that
when
beautiful?
I that is so
Yeah.
beautiful and
Yeah.
it's so true.
Yeah.
And when my mom died, um, she started to come through and she said, "This is home.
Mm,
This is home. You think that's home, but this is home." And that same sense of absolute, extraordinary peace, but joyfulness, right? There's this joyfulness because the our bodies are, we are limited here. We have these square limits. We have these things we can't do. What I have learned this from this is that this other realm, heaven, if you want to say that, call it heaven, is that it is beyond what we can understand. And it is, they can see things from the past, they see in the future, they see what's happening now, they understand, they see things happening, coming. I started having, I had so many weird things started happening with me. I started seeing colors, and that I didn't understand why I was seeing those colors. But I also started getting dreams that were pay attention dreams. The pay attention dreams were really wild. And one of them was one was a pay attention dream that had to do with that business problem that I had
Mm.
that let, and then 4 days later, the bad thing or the message actually happened. So it was a pay attention
In what
preparatory.
way? I don't really understand that. What is a pay
So
attention dream?
this dream I had was very detailed about this problem that I was concerned about. And there's some people involved in that. And in the dream, I am talking to that person, but she's not talking to me. And one of my shoes falls off. One of my shoes falls off. And I'm like, I'm trying to communicate. She won't communicate. And so I go into another area, and it's, dreams are so weird. So it's all
Mhm.
convoluted and stuff like that. But I woke up in the morning completely sweating and like so upset. It's a different energy, right? I said,
Mm.
Dad, to my husband, I said, Chuck, this is happening. Like this is they're doing something. They're doing something really bad for me. And then like I said again, it happened. And then what they told me, Jesus told me, because now I have collaborators. I've got my
Wow.
family who's in heaven. I've got Jesus. I've got God. I've got all these
Wow.
wonderful people. And then Jesus said, that was the other shoe that to fall. That was the other shoe to fall. Like
Waiting for the
there was
other
this
shoe to fall.
strange, yeah, so there was a strange thing that was going on with this business situation, but this was the other shoe. And so they were warning me. And
Mm.
God was, you have to go through these things. It's not like I've had people say, well, why do people get sick? Well, we are human beings, and you can learn a lot when you get really sick too, by the way. And isn't that part of what we're supposed to be doing here? So
Yes.
that dream was a sort of a wake up one. But then I had this other one. Oh, I wrote it down. I won't be able to see it right now, but it was like it was an alchemist,
Mm.
and he's looking in my brain. I'm having these dreams, right? But I'm sort of a whatever, awake, I guess. But he's an alchemist, and he's looking into my brain. He says, "There's nothing there anymore. There's nothing there anymore."
Wow.
You're well. You have nothing there. And I had another one where again I'm dreaming, but I'm making I play piano, and it gives me I'm creating the piano in my mind, right? And I wake up in the morning, I'm like, I think I had a dream last night. I go to the piano and I'm playing it. Like, what is this? Right? So we have dreams, whatever, normal dreams. These were high elevated dreams. And the only reason they were coming into me is because I opened the door and I was curious. And I felt that this was part of my learning session because I don't have that much time to get this right. So, yeah. So
Mm. Beautiful.
I know it sounds crazy, but that
Not to
was my
me.
experience.
Um, and so tell us a little bit more about some of these things that you carry forward in your now, quote unquote, regular life. Now that you've opened that door and walked in the door, and now you feel very connected to the spiritual world and the spiritual side of things. I wanted you to talk more about letting go. And what she says in her book When we become aware of the power of perspective, our judgments, and the act of forgiveness, we empower ourselves by accessing our consciousness. And by doing this, we find space for all kinds of healing.
Mm.
Why do you think that perspective itself is uh, provides space for healing?
Oh, I love that. I'm having a reaction to my own words. Um, this is such a big piece of my learning, the understanding about perspective and also understanding the desperate need for space in our lives. Because if you're cramming your life, you can't learn these things. You have to have this space. But perspective is really the whole game, honestly. Um, I think that you can, if you are so stuck with your vision about one thing, one certain bad thing happened, you don't give yourself the option to have open, like, for example, I could have said, everybody's telling me I'm going to die, right? So if my perspective, if I choose to have a small perspective, this is what's going to happen in 12 months, I'm not going to be here. So I better get all my papers together, which you always do anyway, but that's going to be it. And you're not focused, right? But if you have perspective, you're willing to be a little bit more flexible. Well, what else is happening? Oh, well, there's somebody who's 16 years practicing out who had brain cancer. Your perspective can change. And I think that is honestly one of the most important. I remember somebody asking me, I hadn't written the book, but they said, what do you think the most important thing is that you learned through this journey? And I said, perspective, right?
Mhm.
Being willing to be open. I'd never grew up talking to God and, and all this understandings, but just by being open can open all kind of windows. And so perspective is the same thing. It's the same concept. It's an opportunity. If you are really angry, like we use this example, I was so angry about the person involved in that business issue. It was really hard for me. Um, but I started to, at first, you're just going to be small window, right? Terrible, terrible person, terrible. But after a time, in order to help my own healing, it was important for me to open that up a little and say, I don't know why a person would do these kinds of things. I don't really understand that. Um, and then but so I started opening that and saying, I need God to take this because God knows everything about this person. He knows every bit about that person. And then I started thinking about, again, changing my perspective. We were friends, we
Mhm.
knew we did lots of things and they were funny. And I started thinking about funny things that we did.
Mhm.
Again, expanding my perspective and then thinking, maybe what happened, something when they were little, something in their formative years would think that this would be an okay thing to do somebody who is fighting cancer from a
Yeah.
business perspective. You know, I can judge that and think that that is not okay. But at the same time, why do people do certain things? And so I think perspective, you don't have to get sick to start to imagine some perspective and consider other options. Just like as a lawyer, you might say, a client would come to me and say, I've got this problem. So you just start asking different questions. You don't really know where you're going, but you're starting to put the pieces together. And I think that's what perspective can do.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think it's twofold because you said it gives you space for the healing, but when we are holding on to judgment and resentment and anger, it takes up space. And I like thinking of it that way. Like your brain can only hold so much. And
Yeah.
so if you're holding on with, two tight fists with all just anger and frustration and judgment, which I've been guilty of many times, we're just human beings. But all of that space, that it's full then. And
Yes.
then with that fullness of holding on to all of it for dear life, then there are so many things that we don't see. And I wonder if that's what you meant by, You have to have space for the healing, space for you to see things differently, see beauty everywhere. Like you mentioned at the very beginning, see the butterflies. Because if you're holding on to that tunnel vision and that
Yes.
same, those thoughts and those energies, that those emotions, you're just holding on to it. You don't want to let go, man, you won't see other things. It won't even come into your world, into your consciousness.
You can't open the door. You can't
No.
open the door because it's filled with
Well,
books and stuff and emotions and feelings and stuff. You've got to pull it down. You got to be willing to sort of be vulnerable. I think there is a level of vulnerability when you let go to these tropes, yeah, tropes, I guess. This is a bad person. I don't know. Like I love the way you said it. You actually gave the opposite, which was so beautifully said too. That you're hanging on for dear life. You're spending all of your time and energy. That's a bad person. Okay, okay, great. What do you want to do with it? And I did have a lady say that to me one time. She goes, "Yes, this is bad. What do you choose to do about that?"
mm,
Which is probably what you do in your
good
work.
question.
Um, Very simple, wonderful thing to ask somebody who is hanging on so dear, because people do all terrible things. The divorces and just horrible things. But again, we've talked about this. We don't let go for them. You let go for yourself. That's a
And
really
what do you
important.
think that why is that important in specifically healing cancer? What is so important about that?
Oh, you asked the best questions.
Mhm.
Um, why is that with cancer? Because we do not wake up and get cancer somewhere in our body, right? We don't just wake up, oh boy, where'd that come from? Although the doctors aren't very curious typically, and not to offend them, but they don't very ask that. So, where does this illness come from? Where does it come from? I believe it comes from here, a malaise, a sickness of our thoughts. And our thoughts direct our bodies. So if you're thinking, or if you're not thinking in these higher level energies, then you don't really have an opportunity to undo what you have done. So in my example, I had no really real spiritual connection, and my mind was just focused on my work. It was just on this side, this business side. But when you get sick, it's so critical to me. Yes, the body is a big piece, right? The kinds of food we eat. That's
Definitely.
Oh, I wish I had a thing. I've got this little thing. Basically, take a tree. The base of the tree, that's your body. That's the food, okay? We get that. You got to exercise. You got to breathe, get more oxygen, avoid toxins. Okay, that's basic level. Anybody should understand that. But the juice is in the mindfulness. How did I get here? How did I ask questions? What can I learn from this? What it, what was I doing before this happened? Was I doing things in a toxic way? Was I not loving myself the way? And then the spiritual, that's where they taught me about self-love. They put the crown on me that I didn't deserve, but they taught me how deeply loved that I am. And if they love me that much, then I can love myself. And these untangibles, okay, the mindfulness and the spiritual, it is how you started to get sick. And so if that's how you started to get sick, thinking, I go back into my stuff and I get why I got sick. I was so upset. I was so sad. It was so stressful. But in this circumstance, when you get sick, you got to give yourself plenty of time to get well, and you have to change. And in my mind, you have to change your thinking, and you have to change your mindfulness, and it's a great idea if you're willing to explore a little bit into the spirit. So that's how I think that fits together.
Beautiful. And then talk to us about you talk about judgment and forgiveness. You put one of my favorite quotes in there. It's the weak can never forgive.
Mm.
Forgiveness is the attribute of the strong. That's Mahatma Gandhi. It's one of my favorite quotes. And then what was the process of letting go, and tell us how you felt kind of before and after.
Oh, yeah. For me, I was just so angry. I wasn't even interested in forgiveness. I was so
Mm.
heartbroken by what was happening. And so I don't even think vengeance because I'm fighting for my life. I'm still taking
Right.
chemotherapy and stuff like that. But I was so angry. And what kind of person would do that? But after, maybe even at that point, I had a support person like that you would be, and she was just like, I'm feeling your energy, I'm seeing your energy, we need to amp it down, right? So she was helping me move that energy just because it's too much. And inflammation, which comes from stress, is really terrible when you're fighting cancer or anything
Yes.
really. You don't
Yes.
want inflammation. You're supposed to be calm and listen to meditation. And that's why those things are very important and helpful when you're
Mhm.
sick. So she's trying to move me down, but ultimately I started to say, I need to, I don't want to carry this. And so I'd try. And like I said, I'd start going through these little pieces, like remembering good times, and some of the funny things that happened and some of the good qualities about that person.
Mm.
Oh, that was really hard at first. But, there it is, so there was a reason why you had a relationship with somebody. And you can, she was funny and there were funny things. And there are all kinds of things that you could do. But finally, this went into like a litigation. This was not just a, I don't like you. This was got to
Right.
be a very serious thing. And,
Right.
and I, uh, at some point in that thing, I saw this person and I saw a couple of the other people. And that person did not look strong to me. That person did not look like somebody I'd want to be with at all. It was sort of sad. They looked very sad to me. And I thought to myself, why am I hanging on to that? That's awful. That's awful. What was happening, in my opinion, was the people involved were not feeling good about what they had chosen to do. And they were manifesting it in their physical bodies. And I could see that. I'm doing great. I'm looking well. My hair is pretty short at that point, because
Mm.
the radiation basically took my hair away. Um, but, but my spirit was strong, right? My spirit was strong. And that was where I just said, I'm done playing back and forth. Because I would go back and forth and be like, okay, I'm having a good day. And then somebody would say, I saw so and so, I'd be like, I get right back into it, right? Because it's easy to do
Mhm.
that. But I started to go into more baseline. I was like, God, you have to take this. I don't want this. I have the gifts. I have won. I have won everything. Look, I'm here. I've got my children. I started to realize, what am I hanging on to? And so I let God go with that. And that felt like a pound of bricks off of my body and in my soul and my spirit. And when you do that work, and it's hard, but when you do that work, and then somebody comes and says, hey, guess what? I don't want to know.
Mhm.
I don't want to know, right? Because I've done the work. I know where that takes me. It takes me angry and it makes you frustrated and gets it all going again. I don't want that. No,
Yeah.
that's, I don't need to see that person in my life. If I see that person, I'm not going to run over. I'm going to probably avoid them. But you just start realizing those are toxic people in your lives. I've got so many wonderful, loving people. Why do you space so much time on somebody who's so negative? They're knocking you down. You're not winning when you do that. You're winning when you're just like, no, I give it away.
Yeah. Underneath all anger is a person with a broken heart. That's
Yeah.
all it is. And it's really hard to see it that way. But like you said, you feel like you lose 200 pounds off of the weight on your soul, on your body, on your brain, on your feelings, your emotions, seeing it that way, like you said, changing your perspective to seeing somebody that is sad, the old behind every mat is a sad. I see it as a broken heart. And that's really helps me have more compassion.
Yeah.
So, what is your life like now? That whole lawsuit obviously concluded. Do you not even practice law anymore?
Well, I do as much as I can.
Hmm.
Like, I cannot do what I used to do, 100 lawyers and staff running around going, and
Huge
honestly,
business.
I don't want to,
Yeah.
but I have limitations that I didn't have before.
Mhm.
But it's so funny. I remember them from above, I remember them saying, I've given you enough so that you can send this message to the world, right? And you can live your life with your children and I've given you this, but I'm not giving you everything, right? Like I can't read really quickly. I mean, I have limitations. I mean, it's right there, it's part of your brain. And,
Right.
but they said, so, but I'm not giving you everything. And that's by design, right? So they did not want me to try to, my whole goal was to get right back to what I was doing. Oh, running my, no, 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 no. They made it so, they made it happen. I don't know, but it became so impossible, right? Remember, I wanted to go back and do everything the way I was doing it, but it made it so impossible. And at first I was so frustrated by it, but later on I was like, oh, I see what they're doing. I see what they're doing. They're never going to let me go back to exactly what I was doing before. They, meaning God. That was part of the toxic environment. That was part of the problem. That
Yeah.
we are all energetic beings, right? And when you start to understand, you feel certain people, you feel their good energy, right? And then there are other people, and you're not exactly sure what that is. I think it's very important for people to try to understand energies from other people. I did
Yeah.
not realize how toxic the environment I was before. And so they made it impossible for me to go back to that. And that was truly a major blessing. So I do what I can. And fortunately, my husband's also a lawyer. And so, he's awesome. So we kind of
Mhm.
do what we can. I do what I can.
And how long has it been since you were cancer free?
So 2011, I was diagnosed, and
Mhm.
then I knew, I knew that about that 12 months, I knew it wasn't coming back. I knew I had it. So we're in the 14th year, and at this point, 14 years out of that, so I guess 13 years not having any cancer at all. Um, then I think it's less than 2% would be alive and doing all this stuff. So I'm very grateful, but I do know there are other people like me. And that was the piece I want to share is that not everybody went into the spiritual side um, but everybody did the mindfulness and tinkered a little bit with the spiritual side. The people who, or some people are very spiritual, but what does that mean, right? Like that's a whole other thing. My first point was the people who have had really sick have gone into the mindfulness aspect and the spiritual as far as they could go, but explored it at least. So I do think that that's an important in addition to the physical body. Um, but there was something else I was going to say. Uh,
Mm.
but what I will say about the spiritual side, I've sort of lost my thought there, but on the spiritual side is I just encourage people to just play with it. And how do you do that? How do you do that? You just basically close your eyes and you say, is there anybody there? to talk with me. I'd love to talk to somebody. Is anybody gonna come in, or will anybody come in? I'd like to hear from you. God, are you there? Are you there? I mean, just like that basic stuff. And you just be patient, and just be patient because it's available. I believe it's available to everyone. Now, I think I did kind of have an extraordinary situation with seeing all the colors and having all this messaging, and I still get them. It's like I still get them, but I'm more busy now. At that time, I took 5 years to heal. 5 years. I didn't do anything other than, I was a mom and all those things, but I wasn't working at all, and um, that was a really important time for me to put all those pieces together. So I do think the
Mhm.
spiritual side, if you're willing to explore it, is a good one.
It's incredible and so inspiring. Thank you so much for coming back and telling us more about the spiritual side of your journey and the spiritual side of your healing. Listeners, thanks so much for being here. You got to get her book. It's called The Case for Hope. Jennifer Dickenson. It's such an incredibly inspiring story and journey, and tons of great tools and strategies that you can actually take away, like tangible things you can do to
Yeah.
help, feel better, create more space for healing, get rid of the energy that's not helping you and not serving you. And it's just a wealth of knowledge in there as well. And Jennifer, if somebody is sick and wants to work with you, how do they find you?
The best way is to go to jenniferdickinson.com, and there's a place where you can communicate with me, and I will follow up immediately. And so that's the best way to do it.
Fantastic. Go get our book, A Case for Hope. And I will transcribe this as well if you want to read any of the things that we talked about. It'll be on my website, Create Today Therapy. So, Jennifer, thank you so much. I really appreciate you.
I really appreciate you. Such a pleasure to be here and talk about this with you.
Thank you for being here and listening to my show. If you got any value at all, it would mean the world if you shared it and left a review. Remember, the only way to create the life you love is to take it one day at a time. Create today. God bless you.